Welcome to the PJ Finance Show.
Today we will talk about lessons from Europe. The prices have been going up lately. I can't even get my favorite food after paying for rent and groceries, not to mention this is my first time eating out for the last 3 months.
Well, in that case, maybe you should consider taking out loans.
It's not that serious. I can still live without sushi until my salary increases. But talking about loans, I remember a question I have for a while.
Do tell if it's bugging you. I might be of help.
What do you think about lower interest rates? Is it just to encourage people taking loans out?
There's more to that. First, when the European Central Bank purchases a lot of government bonds in the market through their quantitative easings, the purpose is to lower interest rates in order to reduce borrowing costs as well as to encourage borrowing. Theoretically, more borrowing leads to more spending.
I see. Can you explain in detail?
It is shown in this graph that the gray line, which is 10-year sovereign yield, is moving along with the purple line, which is the corporate borrowing rate. However, when the 10-year sovereign yield turns negative, the purple line starts to divert from the gray line.
I guess it makes sense because when the interest rate on corporate bonds start to turn negative, investors would not want to buy corporate bonds and hence it will diverge and no longer follow the sovereign or government bond yield into negative territory.
Judging from this graph, when the 10-year bond yield turned negative, the interest rates on loans to households and corporations remain somewhat stable at around 1.5%.
What about the encourage borrowing part you mentioned just now?
In the case of Europe, there was no increase in new corporate bond issuance.
Wow. This chart shows that the debt to GDP in Greece, Italy, Spain and Portugal fell sharply. Some parts of this was likely due to borrowers paying down debt despite having a significantly lower interest rate. Looks very much like what we saw in Japan.
We have discussed this in MP4 Lessons from Japan.
Next, the purpose of lower rates is to encourage spending. As shown here, savings actually increase despite lower interest rates.
This does not make sense. The textbook tells us that lower interest rates should lead to less savings and more consumption.
Well, if you consider the demographics in Europe where there are a lot of retirees. Many of them rely on interest payments on their savings to pay for expenses. There are more savings when the interest rate turns negative. When they start to receive less interest payment from the banks, naturally they'll spend less and save more.
The fact that the interest rate retirees earned is insufficient to cover their cost of living during inflation must be difficult for them.
Yes, and this is a shift of wealth from the savers to the borrowers.
Guess that's how the world works, as realistic as it sounds. Well, thanks for the insight, Phoebe. I think I can finally sleep better tonight since I already got my answer.
No problem. Thank you for watching.
This presentation on lessons from Europe is brought to you by the PJ Finance Show.